Top 10 Scary Astronaut Stories. The Knocking. In 2003, Yang Liwei became the first Chinese person in space. It was a historic occasion, but it also became famous for a very creepy occurrence. In 2016, Yang told an interview that he heard someone knocking on the outside of the spaceship. He described it as sounding like a wooden hammer hitting an iron bucket. Terrified, he tried to peek out of the porthole but couldn't see anything outside. When he got back to Earth, Yang described the sound to experts. He even tried to recreate it for them, but nobody could identify it. In the years since, many people have tried to explain this strange phenomenon. Some say it could have been some space debris, but others say that this is unlikely as space debris is few and far between. Others claim it could be the expanding and contracting of the ship due to the changing temperature of the spaceship as it orbited the Earth. Alien music. In 1969, American astronauts Tom Stafford, Gene Cernan and John Young went to the far side of the Moon for the Apollo 10 mission. It was going to be the final test before Apollo 11 took 3 humans to walk on the surface of the Moon for the first time. When the Apollo 10 astronauts were orbiting round the Moon, they took photographs of its surface. As they were working away, they began to hear music. Specifically, they heard a strange whistling sound that lasted nearly an hour. When it faded away, Commander Cernan said, "Boy, that sure is weird music. We're going to have to find out about that," Pilot Young replied. Nobody would believe us, and for the most part, they were right. Many people couldn't explain the sound they claimed to have heard, and so they didn't believe it. The leading theory is that the sound came from radio interference between spacecrafts. The lights. In 2005, astronaut Leroy Chiao was commander on the International Space Station for over 6 months. He was once doing a spacewalk to repair some antennas when something caught his eye. He saw some lights that seemed to be in a line, almost like an upside-down check mark. They flew right past him, but his fellow astronaut didn't see because they were facing the other way. When he described the sighting to those back on the ground, they dismissed it as a fishing boat hundreds of miles below him. Chiao himself has stated that he doesn't believe there's ever been any tangible evidence that someone else is visiting Earth or has done so in the past. He has simply told his story, and is leaving the explaining up to everyone else. Toxic. Bob Kirby participated in his first spacewalk as an astronaut in the middle of the 1990s. Sadly, tragedy struck when a hose connector ruptured and poisonous ammonia sprayed all over him. Covered with debris, he was unable to return to the space station. He corrected the leak and remained composed, but he remained tainted. He developed an idea. Since ammonia has a low boiling point, Bob made the decision to bake himself in space's sunlight for an additional half-hour in an attempt to evaporate the ammonia off him. He was forced to do nothing but wait there in space, praying that he had removed all of the ammonia and that he hadn't contaminated himself or the crew upon returning to the station. His strategy was successful, but it was also one of the most bizarre and terrifying experiences an astronaut could have. The Green Bolt. Gordon Cooper was a well-known astronaut who flew on the Mercury 9 and Gemini 5 missions. He was the last American to fly alone in space. In 1963, he flew aboard the Mercury capsule for a circumnavigational trip around the world. Everything seemed to be going okay. Then, on his final orbit, as he passed over Perth, Australia, he saw a green object swing towards him at an incredible speed. At first, he thought it was just a figment of his imagination. There have been times where pilots and astronauts have seen objects like this, but their equipment detects nothing. This time was different though. The Mouchet tracking station in Western Australia picked the object up on their radar. That was huge. Now he had something solid to back up his own experience. He reported the incident to the National Broadcasting Company. When he returned to Earth, he was eager to tell his side of the story. But Gordon claims he was approached by NBC reporters who told him they had been instructed to not question him about the sighting. All of this has fanned the fire of a UFO conspiracy. Snakes in space. In 1994, Dr. Story Musgrave did an interview where he described his career as an astronaut, and one particular time which shocks him to this day. He said, "On two of my missions, and I still don't have an answer, I have seen a snake out there. 6, 7, 8 feet long. It is rubbery because it has internal waves in it, and it follows you for a rather long period of time. The more you fly in space, the more you see an incredible amount of things out there, and that sort of thing brings to you, really, a certainty that other living creatures are out there." Usually an account like this would be dismissed, but Musgrave is a doctor, he had 6 academic degrees, is a trained mathematician, he was in the Marine Corps and was a NASA astronaut. He seems like a credible witness. He believes there are advanced creatures existing in space itself, and that he has even tried to communicate with them in the hopes that they come down and get him.